So thanks for joining today for our Indeavor lunch, virtual version. Just a few things I want to bring to everybody's attention about upcoming events and upcoming learning opportunities that are on the board here. We're really excited about this Evolve Bootcamp. Kasem Moshem is going to teach it. He is a serial entrepreneur in the tech community. He's done extremely well with recent exits, and he's going to be teaching a boot camp for funded companies that are trying to figure out how to scale their operations. So this is not necessarily for early stage or pre-revenue startups. This is for companies that have actually got market traction and have received either seed or Series A funding. So the boot camp is all about how you scale an organization when you have that kind of opportunity. He is absolutely fabulous. He just did a Startup Grind presentation that was one of the best Startup Grind chats I think we've ever had. So I think it's something you ought to check out, and there's lots of information on our website about it. And then we're also beginning our course curriculum is kicking back up. We're doing marketing for startups, which is taught by Ryan Forrest with Fungi Marketing. Ryan's does quite a lot of work for Flywheel, and is really a good teacher on the fundamentals of marketing. So that is going to be starting on June 30th. At the top of our website on the toolbar, there's a place you can click for courses, and it'll lead you straight to the marketing courses. And then, let's see, what else have we got here? Like to remind people about the gig network that we launched. So this is a way for Flywheel members and anyone in the community to post projects or gigs that they need to connect with talent. We launched this as a service in response to the COVID environment, and it's really become quite active. We've got I think about a dozen projects posted currently. These can be for your business or for your family. These can be, like I need somebody to mow the yard every other week. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to help housebound college students and high schoolers, get a little bit of side work, as well as connect tech talent with the startup companies in our community. So check it out. It's a lot of fun. Post a gig or get a gig. And then we always like to give a big shout out to our sponsors. These folks are what make our programming possible and are also extremely active as mentors for the entrepreneurs that are coming through our developmental programming. I know that we've got one of them on the line today, Dual Boot Partners. Barrett Pack is on the phone. Barrett, we appreciate you being with us. So we really, really appreciate what all these guys do for us. One other shout out, Swiftwater Media is our audiovisual, our videographer. We are now able to produce and host virtual conferences. So if you know anyone or used to run in-person events and conferences and you need a production house to convert that to virtual, with our live stream studio and with Swiftwater Media, we are capable of doing that. We're in the process of producing the Triad Developer Conference, which is an annual conference normally held in the spring. And we will be producing that virtually and helping them launch that conference in July. So more to come on that. So I'm about to turn it over to Eric here. before I do, I want to do two things. I want to, Eric is somebody that I've gotten to know pretty well. We're helping him do some facility analysis here in Winston-Salem and in Greensboro. It's been a pleasure to work with his organization, and it's really opened my eyes to how important Second Harvest Food Bank is to our region, because we are in a region that has a significant disparity between, shall we say, haves and have-nots, and COVID has really kind of brought to light the kind of the social impact that that COVID has had on our community, and how important these services are to the community. If you can't eat, you can't do anything else, you know. So it all starts with kind of going after the problem of food insecurity in every way possible in the community, because that is what makes everything else possible. If we don't do this, you know, we're going to be failing our community in a broad way. And it is a significant problem with the economic impact of COVID. So I'm really pleased to have Eric here today. Eric, I almost feel like we're friends now, so I hope I can say that truthfully.
Absolutely.
Okay. So before we get started, let's go around the horn real quickly. I'll use the panelist thing to kind of ask everybody to introduce themselves. So when I call you out, unmute and tell us who you are and what you do. So Susan Richardson, we'll start with you.
I know Susan was having some audio issues.
All right, we'll try to come back to Susan then. Barrett Pack, you're up next.
Yes, hey, I'm Barrett Pack. I'm with Dual Boot Partners, and we are a software development firm, and we help startups, any size company, but a lot of startups build their software, mobile and web technology platforms.
All right, good work, Barrett. Dinesh, you're next.
Hey, good morning. So I'm new to Flywheel. I work with a digital health startup called Wellframe out of Boston, and my wife just is a postdoc at Wake Forest, so we just moved to the area. So thanks so much for having me.
Okay. John Louder.
Hey everybody, John Louder. I'm the executive director for the Piedmont Triad Apartment Association. We're a trade association for the apartment industry that covers the Piedmont Triad. It includes about 70,000 apartments.
Wow. Good to have you on the call. Thanks for joining us today. Kimberly Nesbitt, are you on?
I am. Good morning. I'm Kimberly Nesbitt. I'm with the Department of Social Services.
All right. Thank you for being on the call today. I hope that mini speech that I just gave got you excited about the call.
It did. It did. I've had a little trouble getting my Zoom working this morning, but
Yeah,
I'm going back and forth. But I'm glad to be here.
Okay. Krista, you're next.
Good morning. My name is Christy Staten. I'm Commander-in-Chief at Creative Force, and I help businesses fulfill their wildest marketing dreams.
And she's fun to work with too. Christy's done a lot of work for Flywheel as well.
And I'm grateful. Thank you.
Let's see, Mary Brooks Hall.
Hi, my name is Mary Brooks Hall, and I'm a freshman at Forsyth Country Day School.
Awesome.
So, hello, Ms. Howell. It's nice to be with you.
Hi, Mary Brooks.
And I just wanted to talk to Mr. Aft about what he was doing with Second Harvest Food Bank.
Awesome. You want to explain the connection to Andrea there?
So I'm a freshman, so I'm going to be taking her husband's class next year in history.
Got it. Let's see. Rick, you're next.
Rick Leander with LFB Holdings. We do behavioral design and behavioral economics, do startups, mentoring, and investing.
Okay. Well done, sir. And thank you for being on the call. Shelby Newsom, you're next.
Hey everybody, this is Shelby. I represent the Center for Creative Economy. We actually work out of Flywheel, love it there. But we focus on creatives and help them launch, grow, and accelerate their businesses.
Okay. Let's see. Brett, you just joined, I believe. Okay, we'll skip Brent for a second. Okay, I'm losing track here. Susan Morris, you're on. Introduce yourself.
Susan Morris. I am the program director for Venture Cafe Winston-Salem.
Okay. And who have I left out? I think there may be some folks that are just on the phone.
Start if that's okay. Yeah, this is Doug Copeland. I'm with Furnitureland South, but I'm also involved in a number of community and business organizations throughout the Triad region.
Okay. All right. Good deal. All right. Well, I think I've also already, anybody else that I left out? Sorry. I want everybody to have a chance here. I've already kind of introduced Eric. Now I want to figure out how to start the recording before you start. So Andrea, help me out here.
Your screen is different.
Yeah, my screen is different from your screen.
I sent you a request to let me record.
Uh-huh.
I don't know where it is.
Uh-huh. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing. And Rick, you can go ahead and take over, and we are recording.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate the opportunity to be with folks today. Try to make sure to start at the beginning here.
Yeah, so
here we go.
Rick's going to go through, Eric's going to go through some slides with us for general background, and then I'm going to facilitate some questions, and everybody else can jump in whenever they want. So Eric, have at it.
Sounds good. I'm going to go over these things very quickly and again, get to the conversational piece of our time together. Again, Peter, thank you, Andrea. Appreciate the opportunity to get together with everybody today. Again, hopefully next time it's in person, but definitely, as they say, we live in interesting times. And at the food bank, every day is interesting. And right now it is more interesting than we probably want it to be, but we're doing the work that we are called to do every single day, and it's a great privilege. A lot of great supporters of our work that are on the call today, and we appreciate all that you're doing, especially during this difficult time. But just to give people a quick background of who we are, we serve the Piedmont Triad in Northwest North Carolina. It's a population of about 2 million individuals, 18 counties. Throughout that region, we support a network of partners, mainly food pantries that are out of churches, out of nonprofit organizations, all over the place, again, in those 18 counties. But it's also soup kitchens, congregate meal programs, summer meal programs, after school meal programs, that type of thing, as part of the part where we are trying to respond to the immediate challenge of food insecurity in our region. From a volume standpoint, we distributed last year over 40 million pounds of food. This year we're slated to do quite a bit more than that. So to give you an idea, on an average, out of our facility alone here in southern Winston-Salem, we typically would provide about 380,000 pounds of food in a week's period of time. 2 weeks ago, which is the most recent data I have, is we distributed 633,000 pounds. And it's just symbolic of where we are. But other than that, we are also working to address the root cause of hunger in our region. And our cornerstone program around that is the Providence Culinary Training Program, which has been around since about '06, graduating 750 individuals from that program. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We also are very active in nutrition education so that people understand how to use nutritious food that we may be distributing or they may see in the grocery store. Believe it or not, there are kids in our region that have never seen, fresh fruits before. Our nutrition educators have come across kids who have never seen an apple in person. It is really unbelievable, but a reality of the food insecurity that we face. And again, we're just proud about our efficiency in distributing food and doing the programming that we do. Now, quickly, unfortunately, food insecurity is a significant problem. 1 in 5 children, 1 in 7 adults, and those numbers are getting worse by the day. We do estimate that those will move towards more negative numbers as we go throughout the year to be more about 1 in 4 of our children and 1 in 6 adults facing food insecurity. But when you look at it across our entire region, people may not realize, based on U.S. Census data, that 30% of the 38%, it's actually very close to 39% of the households in our region have incomes of $35,000 or less. So again, when you think about 4 in 10 households basically have incomes of less than $35,000, you can understand why we have such a challenge. And we'll talk about the pandemic a little bit later some more, but we are seeing over 40% increase in requests for food. And in some places it's 100% depending on the pantry. Some are as low as 20% increases in more rural areas, but it's ranging between 40, pretty much 40 to over 100% requests, increases in requests. We'd like to highlight the impact we have in a lot of ways. You saw the reach that we have just from a business standpoint. I think y'all will appreciate we're the second largest nonprofit in the region, $67 million in revenue last year. Goodwill Industries in Northwest North Carolina is #1. And, we will actually probably eclipse them this year because of the increased work we have been called to do, as well as the fact that Goodwill had to close their retail stores for a little while. It's not, moving to #1 in that situation is not necessarily a thing of pride, but a reality that, we have a significant reach and are managing, as you see, a lot of individuals and doing a lot of work. That Providence Culinary Training Program, on an annualized basis, we're graduating over 60 individuals. The success rate is great. Typical programs that are employment programs like this, a good success rate is around 35%. And that means that individuals get a job and sustain a job for more than a year. And especially when you're working with folks who have a very tough job history. They've been incarcerated, they have substance abuse challenges, they've been homeless, they just have a really poor work history. And we're really able to put them on a path for success in the culinary world, not just a job, but actually a path where they're going to grow. We have many people who become sous chefs and executive chefs in area restaurants. And then indirect benefit is, if you can imagine just working with somebody in your office or your warehouse setting who isn't regularly eating, or eating nutritious foods, their focus is going to be off, which could create danger. It could just create inefficiencies in your work. So that's a critical role that we play by ensuring we can provide those resources for families. And then our kids, what it was like. It's hard enough to concentrate in school. To start with, if you hadn't eaten for a day, imagine how difficult that becomes. So helping them be focused in school so that they can be on a path to success is a critical role that we play. I'm going to stop right there. I can go into more details about our Providence culinary work, some of the innovations we have with our COVID-19 response, and then go into more detail on that. But really want to hear from you about what questions you might have. So as Peter said, to do this conversationally rather than me present for another 10 minutes, rather hear from you what questions you have about what's going on out there, what challenges we see and how we're responding. that okay to do, Peter? I know you're muted.
Yeah,
See,
that's,
Brent has a
that's
question.
awesome.
I was just going to ask Eric, I'm really intrigued with the culinary training. What do you attribute your success rate to, and what sort of skills do you try to pass along to the participants?
I threw up on the screen kind of the process. What we would term the secret sauce. There's actually, when Chef Jeff Bacon, who founded the program back in '06 and still leads it today, you know, he talks about the secret sauce, and I think there's actually a few secret sauces out there. But one of the big things is when they come into the program is they are embraced for where they're coming from and given a lot of support, and they have a lot of individuals who've been there themselves, and they see reflected in their instructors as well as our staff, people like themselves who have faced some challenges. The other piece is when they get into the program, it is a combined classroom and hands-on experience, and they do that immediately. It's not like you're stuck in a classroom for the first 3 weeks and then you get your hands on a knife, you know, in week 4. You do that immediately. And so you're in the classroom, you're in the kitchen right away. And I think the other big piece is one of the things that they're doing in the kitchen is they're preparing what we call community meals. And so they are actually helping to prepare meals that are going to go out and help people. So they feel this connection that, hey, not only am I getting training, but I'm giving back to my community as well. We also provide, you know, a hands-on experience at the end of the process. It's the 13th week of the program where they go out into the community as an internship. Many of those internships turn into to jobs, you know, and we have people at, you know, area hotels, you know, who work like at the Marriott. They may work for some senior centers, retirement locations, but also we have a huge number of folks who are in restaurants where we typically would be eating. Hopefully you're taking out of. I know Fratelli's, which has placed a number of our folks, whether it's at Three Bulls or Fratelli's or Sammy G's. I know they just restarted their takeout. But Moselle's, we now employ one of our graduates who is a former executive chef. If you like the Springhouse restaurant, the sous chef is a graduate from there now. So again, it's those connections into the community as well as that hands-on experience, I think, are keys to success.
So Eric, while we're on Providence Catering, that we use Providence Catering for all our events, or at least we used to when they were in person, and we look forward to doing it again as soon as possible. In fact, just talking about it makes me hungry. One of the things we've learned in working with your facility planning is just how much Providence does. I didn't realize that Providence actually creates a lot of the meals for the public school population. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. One of the programs that we run is called the Community Meals Program, and Providence in that bigger department oversees that. So on a regular basis, again, you know, it's weird how we're referring to kind of normal times and now COVID-19 times. During regular times, we were providing, you know, summer meals that, again, Providence's team members were doing to, I think last summer it was 32 sites across the region. And then doing after school programs, we're expanding to about 17 different ones. So providing after school meals for kids who often are going home to either limited meal, no meal at all, or could be fast food off the McDonald's dollar store menu. This way they're getting a balanced nutritional diet. Now, under COVID-19, I'm a attempt to flip to, a lot of these have a lot of pictures, so it takes a minute to get there. Whoops, too far. There we go. So what we're doing is we have 26 sites we're working here. This is actually just in Forsyth County. 26 sites in collaboration with Love Out Loud, the Ministers Conference, others. We're providing over 23,000 meals a week. And we're also doing things in Guilford County. We're doing things up in Ashe County. And we're continuing to expand that work because we're going to be at this for a while. So you can kind of see in that middle picture and the picture to the right, a little bit of a sample of what the meal looks like. The middle one is actually from COVID response activities where they're getting milk and fresh vegetables and a fruit cup and some cereal, as well as a meal they can take home to have that night. So that's just a quick idea of some of that work, and we're continuing to look for ways to expand those activities.
So I've got a ton of questions I can ask, but I don't want to dominate. Who else? Let's go to the audience. Rick, you got a question?
Yeah, Eric, I'm relatively new to this topic and was in a meeting earlier this year where someone said there are north of 80 organizations just in our geographic area alone that have some sort of play in this space, mostly around child nutrition and that sort of stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how you work with those and whether the community ought to be thinking about some process for rationalizing that?
Yeah, and actually, if you talk about just north of 80, that's in Forsyth County. If you look at our region, we work with 290 partners who are doing over 460 different kinds of programs. It's a good question, and the thing about them is they range in days and times that they're open. So you actually, among that, let's just take Forsyth County. You may have a number of programs that are just open on weekends. Some that may just be open one weekend a month. A very few number of programs are open 5 days a week, during a kind of a traditional business time frame. And it's something we look at carefully as to who's doing what where. And then the other piece of it, which again goes back to the kind of that business argument, is a lot of those are all volunteer. So the expenses are borne by the churches and that type of thing for the storage of food and that type of thing. And we have said no to folks who want to become partners, with us when there's clear geographic overlap. But one of the challenges we have to realize is transportation. So having so many partners when transportation is a major barrier for those who need the assistance helps to make sure that they can have easier access to getting help. So that's an important piece. I will say, we source here in Forsyth County specifically, we source right at 78% of the food that gets distributed. So from that standpoint, it's highly efficient for where people are sourcing their food. And across the region, it's a little lower. It's about 75% that we source. So that's a good thing, where we're coordinating efforts in that fashion. So Rick, it's a great question. It's a complex one, and I will candidly say that the team that works with our partner agencies, they've been tasked to continue to ask that question and to help come up with kind of a master plan of how can we best serve those who are facing food insecurity. Is it that size network, or is it asking people to consolidate locations and expand times and days that they're open and that type of thing? Hope that helps some.
So piggybacking on that just a little bit, Eric, you're running quite an extensive logistical operation. And on the incoming side, in terms of where the food is coming from, can you talk a little bit about that? I know there's community donations. The big retailers like Walmart and Lowe's Foods and so forth are bringing you, surplus food that isn't moving through their systems. but it's really a massive scope. And not to mention, talk a little bit about the impact of the trade wars on the food supply, because there's been a lot of food that normally would have been exported that is being rerouted through the food bank network. So tell us a little bit about the supply side.
Sure. And I put up a slide that kind of tries to show our process a little bit. And I'll note kind of the arrows starting at the blue over to the red, kind of third of the way down. And then there's a key one down at the bottom as well. Speaking of trying to be as efficient as possible. So one of that we like to highlight are the grocery stores themselves, especially the distribution centers. We're very fortunate, the Walmart distribution center in Mebane, the Lidl distribution center in Mebane that we pick up from, especially the Walmart one provides significant food that we pick up directly. But as you know, there's hundreds of grocery stores in our region. And instead of us going to pick up from every single one, we actually have a store matching process with store rescue program, where with those partners that we were talking about earlier is we actually match them with various stores and meet the requirements the store has, the expectations we have around food safety and that type of thing. And so they go and pick up from a lot of those, and we manage those relationships with about 280 stores across the region. So it's a constant strategic game of where is the store, who's available to pick it up, all that stuff. But community donations, you know, is about 10 to 12% of the food. And that's tough right now because not a lot of food drives going on, because businesses aren't together, churches aren't meeting, and that type of thing. And so we're missing out on that. Farms and community, we source where we can from farms directly and indirectly, meaning that we have some partners who we work with to source that food, including North Carolina Department of Agriculture, secure the food, and it gets processed and back out into the food system. The federal commodities you're talking about, Peter, is a growing piece at the moment. Historically, we would receive federal commodities, again, around 10, 12% of what we do. Now it's probably north of 30 to 40%. Because of the trade wars that pre-pandemic time, we were seeing an increase in the federal commodities that we were receiving and could distribute. The federal government is looking to increase the amount of federal commodities we have because of the pandemic, and so we'll be seeing more of that in the coming months, and that's why it will be an increasing piece of the puzzle. I will say, very importantly, because of the run on the grocery stores and the craziness that happened at the start of the pandemic, we've seen a big decrease in what the grocery stores are sourcing to our partners. I just got some data yesterday that one of those large providers have roughly cut in half what they're able to provide. I don't have it right in front of me, but it went from roughly in a month's period of time from about 300,000 pounds that were through that store rescue program with this one provider to about 180,000 pounds. So that kind of drop has really hurt our system. Not the food providers, not the grocery providers' fault. I mean, it's really all on us who went to the grocery store and did mad crazy buying and totally messed up the food system. It is healing itself. There's not a short supply of food. It's just getting it processed and out to the stores, which does, you know, it's not an instantaneous thing. So it makes it hard on all of us, including our work in trying to get food out to those who need it. So hopefully that, between what that I said and shared, as well as this little graphic, gives the people a sense of kind of how we assist out in the community and how we source food.
Mary Brooks, I know you wanted to pose some questions to Eric. Do you want to unmute and? There you are.
Well, I have actually two questions. One is, what are the percentages around, like, roughly, of people that are working paycheck to paycheck and the working poor do you serve that just need that little, like, short-term amount of food?
Yeah, it's a great question. The majority of the individuals that we serve are working or have income of one sort of another. So that's important for people to understand. The other piece is that we talk about the fact that in a household you get bills for things, but food is not something that you get a bill for. So it is often the last thing that families figure out how to purchase, because you got to pay your rent, you got to pay your utilities, you got to have some kind of transportation, whether it's a bus pass or a car, that type of thing. And so a high percentage of the people who seek assistance from us are working, but they just need a little help. The other data point that we have along that is really interesting, that we know how often people come to seek assistance. And what our data tells us, and this is from 15 of our 18 counties, is that people who seek assistance, about 85% of them are coming 4 times or less to a food pantry, and that's any food pantry. So people are not using this as a grocery store, and roughly 33% are coming 2 times or less in a year. So again, it's really just to get people over that hump. So it's a really good question.
Mary Brooks, you had a second question. You want to go ahead and ask?
This was kind of relating to the whole general topic, but I was just wondering if I could talk to you, Mr. Aft, about my project later, and I could contact you about it. It doesn't really do with like statistics or anything, but
Sure. Yeah, just go on our website and has all our contact information, or shoot me an email, which is just eaft@secondharvest.org, and we couldn't find a time to chat. Always happy to do that. And I know we've got a number of folks working on projects right now, and anything they learn helps us learn too.
Thank you.
So Eric, I know.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is Kim. Can I ask a question, please? Yeah. Mary Brooks's question brought it to mind. Eric, you said, so food isn't a bill. Do you have any feel for how many of your customers are recipients of SNAP benefits? So I mean, do you have a feel for that?
You know, I bet you one of our team members could answer that. You know, we actually, one of our team members is tasked with doing SNAP outreach and helping people to, you know, get connected with DSS. And because we know, and I think this is a really important point and good question you brought up, is the fact is that for every meal we can provide through our network, that SNAP provides 9. So think about that and how valuable SNAP really is to the system. And that's why we actually have a person who does outreach for that, to support the great work that DSS does, whether it's here in Forsyth or throughout the region. Unfortunately, it's only one person. We would love to have more to do that, because we know how valuable it is.
Thank you.
Eric, I'll jump in with one. So we've seen pictures in the paper of the National Guard assisting with operations. Obviously, that's helping you respond to the surge in demand. But I mean, this had to really be an all hands on deck experience for the organization. How have you adapted to this surge? And tell us about some of the innovations that you've focused on to try to meet the increased demand.
Yeah, I think first we needed to also protect the organization for the long term. So we had would have continuous services. So those folks who could work from home, we asked to do so, and they continue to provide invaluable service in that way. And if there was a widespread outbreak, and not just one of us getting it, that we would have people who could step in. So that was really important. What we rely on volunteers to do a lot of our work. The number of volunteer hours that we received last year, if you combine them and then figured out how much person power that is that would be equal to 23 full-time equivalent employees. So we can't do what we do without volunteers. And when the pandemic hit, stay-at-home orders hit, that source just completely dried up. Even though people could, even with stay-at-home orders, they could come volunteer because we are an essential service. But we were very lucky to have the guards step up and get them deployed to us for an initial 30 days and now 90 days. So we have, initially we had as high as over 50 guard members, soldiers here, and we now are kind of settling in around 30 to 35 to help us with distribution, with some of our innovative work, where if we do receive, this might be fun for people to know, that if we do receive food that is not something that is of the quality or frankly going bad, like produce and cakes and bread and that type of thing, is we don't just landfill that. We actually work with pig and dairy farmers to repurpose it so it goes back into the food system. It saves us from landfill costs, it's better for the environment, and it saves our farmers money too. So it's the all-around triple win there. But what we've done differently is, it used to be that our partner agencies would come in and pull food that they need. We can't have them and don't want them in our facility anymore for safety purposes. So we changed our distribution methodology. So right outside my window here, we've got partner agencies being loaded up outside. Actually, the picture on there is an example of a guard member. We did receive a few who can drive forklifts, so helping to load food of one of our partners. Shift to expansion priority. As Peter talked about, working with us in Greensboro, is we're looking at rapidly opening up a satellite location that can make it easier for people to access food in our eastern counties, not only Guilford, but Randolph and Alamance, Rockingham, Caswell, that area.
Talk a little bit about the technology piece. We have quite a large intersection with the technology innovation community. So some of the developers on the call might be interested in, where are the opportunities? And in general, I'm sure you track kind of best practices among other food banks. Kind of where is the food bank industry in terms of being state of the art from a technology perspective, or really trying to catch up? And where are the opportunities for technology to play a big contributing role?
Sure. Well, the network of food banks, and we're part of the Feeding America network, which is by far the largest, and our expectations of how we function are very high around food safety and other ways that we operate our businesses. So it really all depends to some degree which food bank you're talking about. We're not where we need to be. The technology things we've implemented will seem very rudimentary to those on the call. For instance, we developed an appointment-based system where people could go online, choose an appointment time, show up, and pick up food. That is now being adapted to the new distribution model that we have in place right now. So that is something, again, very rudimentary from a tech standpoint, having the software developed in-house that can basically do that. In addition, we're developing a process where people can select what food they need. Do they need dairy items? Do they need produce? Do they need shelf-stable items? So they can basically submit that online. It goes to the folks who are pulling it in the warehouse. They get it together, and it's picked up by the agency, the food pantry, or what have you. Again, for some of y'all out there, you're saying, okay, why weren't you doing it before? And the answer is we just weren't. Our systems were working for us the way it had been set up. And I've challenged our team to use technology a little bit more effectively. In the long run, though, we need to do a better job of knowing exactly what we have coming in-house. And this is some learning from some food banks, but also some of it will just be cutting edge to really scan in what we receive and scan out what we're distributing. And what that means is combining the data that we have on our partner agencies and who they're serving to target food better. So for instance, maybe up in Alexander or over in Alexander County, there's a pantry that is mainly serving young families. And instead of just kind of grabbing wide range of product to distribute them, we can very much look at our inventory and say, okay, here's food that is better for young families. So let's make sure we're distributing in our delivery out to Alexander to that pantry, those kinds of foods. And we'll have real-time inventory so we know that. So we may have another one down in Davidson that is very focused on serving seniors, and we can pull senior-friendly product and do that more effectively. So it's better for those we're serving, higher nutrition, and it's more likely to be utilized as well. So, and having the technology, the software, as well as the conveying systems inside a facility is key to us going forward. And we're just doing the tip of the iceberg with some things in our current facility and during this pandemic.
I've got a couple more questions, but I want to try to, Susan, John, Shelby, Christy, Dinesh, do you have questions you'd like to pose? Apparently not, so I'll go ahead with mine. We know that from the Winston-Salem Journal that you battled COVID yourself, and you mentioned earlier, you know, that I guess that kind of created a scare in terms of, you know, being able to operate and not, you know, creating an outbreak within your own organization. Can you share a little bit about that, if whatever you feel comfortable telling us about that experience and what it was like to be on the front line like that, come down with COVID, and then come back to lead the organization?
Sure. I think the most fortunate thing is the fact that nobody else in our organization or my family got it. So I'm so lucky with that. And, you know, being in my role is, you know, I kind of joke that I'm the least important person here anyway. So if anybody's going to come down with it, it's, you know, it should be me. So the rest of our team could do what they needed to do. You know, I'm happy to share it. I said to Andrea earlier, it's kind of weird to be known for having a disease. But, you know, what was fortunate was when, you know, I first was symptomatic. Of course, I probably had it before then, is I was out, actually, WXI was doing a piece on our community meals program, and I was out, and we were, you know, very much practicing social distancing and really joking about it, because Laney Pope had this 10-foot long microphone that we were using. And so we were out in the sun for quite a while, so I just wasn't feeling that great. And then just thinking it was a hot day in March, and so probably just overdid it. But then when I got home, kind of moving from, you know, kind of not feeling well and having a headache to immediately getting chills, I was like, oh crud, I'm coming down with either a cold or flu or something. So just in case, I told my wife and daughter, I'm like, all right, don't get near me. I'm isolating in the bedroom. So, you know, the headache and chills and everything continued, you know, for a week. And, you know, talked with the doctor once. They're like, well, let's see. It's impossible to get tested. When they talk about we're doing a great job in testing, we're not. It's horrible. I mean, you know, it was 10 days of fever and chills and a headache. It was only until I started having trouble breathing, which are like, oh, you should probably get tested. And I was like, this is terrible. If somebody in my position, meaning who can ask the question and has transportation and can isolate, and continue to push on it, is not able to get tested. When Peter talked about the inequity issue, is what about people who are not comfortable asking the question, who aren't able to isolate, and they're not being tested, so are they spreading this? Finally, I had a chance to go to, actually it was in the evening when I was on a teledoc call, and they're like, you need to go to urgent care. And they checked me out and said, you need to go to the hospital. And after kind of a back and forth in the hospital situation, they checked and I had pneumonia in both lungs. And they're like, okay, you need to stay. And this is probably, in fact, created by the virus. The test that they ended up doing, finally ended up doing after 10 days, came back the next day and was showed to be positive. They were like, okay, yeah, it is positive. And so bottom line is, it's miserable. It's a horrible disease. It was scary from the standpoint of being able to breathe well. I was fortunate I did not have to be put on oxygen. My body was able to fight off the virus enough, but they did keep me in the hospital for 4 days. And the uncertainty by the doctors about, one said to me, not very comforting, was, yeah, we like where your markers are going, but also we've seen people do this and end up in the ICU. So luckily, I was able to come home the day before Easter. I self-isolated, encouraged to do so for another 48 hours, which was around, I think, April 11th or 12th, and was noted as being COVID-free at that point. So
the total experience was what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
It's about 3 weeks in total. And if you've ever had a headache or you get migraines, having a headache for 13 straight days with a fever is really, really miserable to start with. And I feel for anybody who has to deal with that. And then you add the breathing issue and everything. It's real, and it is horribly unpleasant.
So we're almost at our time here. In fact, I think we are at our time, but I have one more very important question, which is, how can we help? What's the best way for us to encourage community members to get engaged in what Second Harvest is doing? What's your recommendation on how we can be an important part of your efforts?
I appreciate that, Peter. There's really 4 ways. Traditional nonprofits the first thing they're gonna say is money, and that is true. To help us purchase more food, we estimate we're gonna be at a very high level of service for another 18 months because of the economic impact of the pandemic. So getting us the funds and resources to be able to purchase more what we call emergency food boxes, and as needed high need items like protein and dairy. So that's critical. People who can do food drives, looking at high need items, and we've got those listed on our website. That's fantastic. We've had people do that in neighborhoods. We had 2 young kids go door to door, even social distancing, and raise dollars for us and some food. The other piece is advocating. We talked about SNAP earlier. We want to see a 15% increase in SNAP benefits. Importantly, SNAP is an elastic program, meaning when it is needed, people get on it, and as their income goes up, they either get decreased benefits or they are no longer on the program. And it works really well, as demonstrated by the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, when it went way up, the rolls went way up, and then they went down as things got better. So we need to provide more resources for that. So contacting legislators about increasing SNAP benefits would be great. And then finally, our National Guard members are doing the work of our volunteers at the moment. They are on a 90-day deployment, and that'll be it. So when they leave, we're going to be in need of volunteers. So people continue to look at our website or contacting us about how to be involved after we kind of hit towards the end of summer will be really critical for us.
Okay. Eric,
when does the Guard's deployment end? When's the end of that period?
Yeah, they just started, their first deployment ended actually on Monday, so they just started literally today, their 90-day deployment that we've been provided. Really fortunate about that. It's a great group of guys. One of them who's about to retire, one of the First Sergeant Russell, he said to me, he emphasized he's about to retire, so he's been on a lot of deployments, floods, hurricanes. He said, I'm not counting my deployments to the Middle East, but he goes, from a humanitarian standpoint, this is the most meaningful I've ever been involved with, which meant the world to us because he's seen it all. So we are thankful to them.
And we are thankful to you and your organization. Eric, thank you very much for spending this time with us today.